Come on in, get cozy. We are starting our next session. We have Motherhood, Creativity, and Equality Moonshot, brought to you by Shelance. Can I get a raise of hands, the mothers or parents in the room? Good, love it. I mean, even if you're not, I'm sure we have a lot to learn from these, distinguished panelists that we have here, because let's truly face it, that motherhood and creative work are often seen as conflicting more than coexisting. And parents, especially in leadership roles, really face unique challenges from the feeling of guilt or, lack of support from their workforce. And this can be especially true within the advertising industry in the creative field, because it's fast-paced, it's demanding, and it's highly competitive. So we can really pose unique challenges for mothers. And it's common for you to feel like you have to sacrifice one over the other. You really can't make those decisions. And so now within the session, we're going to delve into the advertising industry's role in supporting working mothers and emphasizing the importance of empathy and flexibility, and how we can problem solve with a group of panelists here who really have been spearheading this initiative in big, bold ways to create a more inclusive environment for working moms. So before we get started, I'm just going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves and go around the room, and we'll start with you, Hollie.
Hello, I'm Hollie Fraser, so I'm a creative director and the founder of Shelance. And Shelance is a collective of female freelance talent to really help, women looking for a different way to approach the creative industry through freelance work. And that's me.
Thanks, Hollie. Hi, I'm Laura. I am founder and chief creative officer at Uncharted, which is a brand new agency. We're 10 weeks old. Previously CCO and president at Grey, and also founder of She Says, which is the largest global network to sort of help the careers of women in the creative industries.
I'm Charlene. I'm one of the ECDs at the OR, which is part of Mother Family. Before that, I was at Droga 5 London, and then before that, I was at BBH.
Hi, and I'm Claire. I'm the CEO of MullenLowe London. I've been in this role about a year, and I've kind of grown up in creative agencies from Leo's to AMV to now MullenLowe. So I'm coming with a slightly different hat on, actually, to these guys, but share very much the same kind of creative ambition.
Awesome. Well, a lot of different perspectives here, and I'm sure everyone is definitely looking forward to hearing. Just a reminder, if you want to engage in the conversation, for those here and at home, tag World Women Fund, and we have the hashtag Equality Moonshot. So we're going to start here. Everyone has very different personal experiences, and Hollie, we'll start with you. Can you just share for the group, like, what are the tips and tricks and how you are balancing motherhood within your creative work?
Oh, wow. The tips and tricks are hard. But I guess, my story is quite common. Like, I guess I technically dropped out of the ad industry to go freelance. I do work full-time with the ad industry, but I wanted to create a, let's call it work-life blend, because it's very much a blend, but a structure that I have more control over. So I feel like with freelance, and particularly the people I work with, are normally people who know me, people I've worked with before, and they allow me to do my work when and where I want to. So that's why I went freelance. And I think the tips and tricks are owning your, and I hate saying the word superpower, but superpower of being a mother, which is having all of these extra tools in your toolkit from, juggling, juggling kids and work, and empathizing, as we talk about a lot. And that helps you understand other people within your agency, within your team, how they want to work. And really kind of nailing that balancing act. And it is a fine balance, but I intermingle work and life kind of quite seamlessly.
How about you, Laura? My son is at the sort of other, I guess, the end of the scale, where I'd say I've got he's going to pop out the other end, but reality is he will never pop out the other end, I'm sure. So he's 16, about to turn 17. And there have been moments where it's been really hard. I think the best thing that I did was actually move agencies and find an agency that would support me more as a mum. When I gave birth to my son, I was the first person, myself and the MD were the first people to ever have children in the agency ever. So there wasn't even a maternity policy. Luckily, because it was the MD also having a baby, she wrote one which wasn't bad. But I found when I came back as a creative leader, because I've always, had like such creative energy and passion and ambition, the thing that killed me most was being underestimated and people looking at you and going, well, you don't want to work on that pitch because it's going to be a lot of work, or you don't want to do that thing because don't you want to be home with your son? Of course I want to be home with my son, but I really want to, I had sort of big work ambitions, and so I actually moved agencies to somewhere where it was still tough. They expected a lot of work, but I was able to kind of manage and juggle a little bit more. And just quickly, I guess the other thing I do, which I learned to do, is kind of ask for things on behalf of my son and myself. So if I'm speaking somewhere or doing something in at school holidays, I'll literally put him on my rider and say, I'm not going unless you fly him over and put him up in some, give me a space to put him and look after him while I'm doing my talk. And it's amazing how many places go, actually, that's really great. We value that. And so he's come all over the world with me.
If you don't ask, you shan't receive. And I think that's very bold, because oftentimes I feel like people would hold back from doing that out of fear of losing out on the opportunity if they say no. If they say no, then it's not for you.
I just like to make it clear with the rest of my agency that I'm monumentally failing every day at this. I think a lot of it was because I wasn't prepared when I got into this. So this is my role at the moment, is new to me. It's management, it's leadership, never done it before. So I naively went into it thinking like, I'm going to be a bad bitch. I'm going to do this. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to have boundaries and things like that. And actually, like, when I got into it, I was like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. It's really hard. I don't have boundaries. So what I've realized I've sort of fallen into is a group of people that are kind of watching and keeping an eye on me. So I share all the sort of my issues and the things that I'm doing. And there's sometimes when I'm sort of like so like ingrained in like the work and stuff, someone will come up to me and say like, you should go home, go and see your kid, go and pick your kid up. You haven't picked him up this week, go and pick him up. And that's really nice. So I think even just me I think I'm just learning on the trot, like, unfortunately. But also it's kind of teaching the rest of the people. Like, we've got a couple of women in the agency who are pregnant at the moment. And every now and again, I'll just go, I've just got something I want to say to you that I didn't do, but I think you should do it. And just kind of using it as a means to sort of make people feel open and feel like it's a safe space to kind of talk about the things that they're kind of worried about before they give birth, rather than after you give birth and do what I did, which was like probably not a good idea. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo so much of what everyone has said. I think for me, it's very much about, yes, I'm a CEO, but I'm also a mum and I'm one person. So I think I'm a really big believer in about bringing your whole self to work. And I definitely sway between nailing it and failing it. But I think talking about the failing it bit or finding it really difficult and just being honest about that is really important. And actually, I think I feel really lucky. I'm smiling at my team over there, because I think we've got a very unusual leadership team, and the fact that there's a lot of women on my exco, but also a lot of women that all have small children. And I think we've got into a very shared conversation about the juggles of work. And I think that's a really important space to have, because I think it's about creating safe spaces for people to have those conversations.
At the end of the day, we're all human, and we need to remind ourselves that, right? And as mothers, we're talking about empathy, and the empathy that you carry as like a human and what you bring to the table. Can you talk a little bit about how does empathy develop through motherhood translate into the creative work, or how you lead creative teams? Anyone wants to start?
I'll give it a go. I don't know. To be honest with you, I haven't seen it translate into the creative work, but where I have seen it translate is management. And I kind of think of like having a child is someone going into management training. it's like you start finding that you become much more efficient, or you start looking at things in a slightly different way. And I think because where the industry is so fixated on sort of like very particular values or things that people value more in the industry, you start to kind of operate in a much more efficient way. You try to sort of like, right, I've only got an hour, so I need to crunch all this time, which kind of goes against what this industry's been about so far, which is kind of more 0 hours kind of type working. And I think within all of that, there is just kind of like, I don't know, like there's just, I've lost my train of thought. What was it?
I think I would say, I think it's building on that, which is I think my kids have given me perspective. So I think I'm much better about being able to contextualize things, and I know what really matters to me and actually around people. And I think my kids have definitely brought that into me. I think from a creative perspective, it's interesting because I'm not sort of sitting here in a creative seat, but I actually used to spend a lot of time working in New York, and I went back a year or two ago post kids. And I think the thing I love about kids is they do just see the world differently. And now wherever I travel, I take a photo diary of where I am to show my kids where I've been. But it made me see the city completely differently. So I was showing them what a pedestrian crossing looks like in New York, or a taxi or a school bus. And I kind of love that. For me, it's really reignited my imagination, I think, because they just do digest content so differently to us. And I think that's a brilliant, healthy thing to kind of have.
Creativity of a child's mind is incredible.
Yeah, actually, we was on a panel earlier on today with the creative technologist from Le Pub, talking about all the amazing Heineken work that they do. And actually, one of those ideas, the Heineken phone, came from his 5-year-old daughter, who just said, "Why don't you make the opener into a phone, Dad?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you very much."
I can't wait for my son to
Yeah. But you're right, they come at things from completely different angles and things you don't expect. And I actually, sometimes when I'm judging or what have you, my son will sit with me for a couple of hours and go through the work with me. His point of view is always really interesting, particularly when it comes to things like, social gaming, those kinds of areas that he's really interested in.
Do you have anything you want to add, Al?
I don't think so. I think you touched on all the points, but I think like Charlene was saying about, I think that empathy really translates into how you interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say it, but like pre-kids, I had zero empathy for parents. Like I just sat there as a 20-year-old, like, why are they leaving early? We've got all this work to do. Like you don't know how to see someone else's perspective unless people tell you about it or you live it. And then when you live it, you're like, holy, can I swear? Holy F, this is hard. Like, why is nobody helping me? Look, I'm drowning. And so I think, like it translates into creativity, but it just translates into how you navigate everyone in the office. And you just want to be like, I'm so sorry. Or maybe that's just me. But I'm so sorry, everyone who I used to work with and was like a terrible 20-year-old.
Being able to have that perspective is incredible, and then very, very important. So pivoting to that, what in your mind do you think the advertising industry could be doing better to support working mothers?
Well, I mean, flexible working. I had a 5-month-old when lockdown happened, and yes, it was very stressful because I was obviously working full-time. I was working for a full-time agency as a full-time employee, but it just like opened my eyes to like, they would tell me a deadline and I could meet it, but I did the work when I needed to, like when they napped or in the evening. I could walk out the house when I wanted to or do my washing when I wanted to. So like as a parent, having that flexibility just was everything and kind of transformed my life. And so I think like really trying, I know it's hard, agencies want to get people back in the office and have that culture, but having a lot more flexibility and freedom that isn't just for working parents, but for everyone, because once you make a policy for one person, there's always that sense of resentment towards a group. I want to be that 20-year-old that goes, yeah, I can leave at 4 because my mental health isn't good and I need to go to the gym, or I need to do yoga. And when we're all empowered to do that, like everyone can benefit.
Yeah, I think the industry could benefit a lot from actually during the onboarding process, really starting to understand what people are like, the whole self of people are. So you can ask more questions about what are your needs. We do it a lot, and we're starting to do it a lot with things like neurodiverse staff. So do you need a quiet space? How do you like to work? But I think we could extend that further into like, what do you need as a person to be able to bring yourself fully to work, and making sure that everyone knows that that's okay. Because I think it is hard to ask for stuff, and it is much easier just to kind of fit in with the status quo and feel like there's not going to be any flex even when there is going to be.
I think what lots of agencies have is policies in place, and that's great because I think it sets an intention, but you have to live by the policies because otherwise they just sit in a pack of paper. So I think for me, I feel a really important part is we have flexible working, which I really strongly believe that's why I can do the job that I have. But also we have core hours, for example, 10 till 4, and I don't come into the office till 10 because I think if I'm there at my desk at 8:30 every day, it's setting a different precedent. Whereas actually, I'm quite happy to say to people, I've got to run tonight because I'm on pickup. And I think unless leaders in the business start living out the behaviours, I think it's really difficult for other people to feel they have permission to do that.
I think it sort of goes back to what I was whittering on a minute ago before I lost my train of thought about like, it's a bigger thing. It's like we are currently living in a time where everything's moving so much faster. We work every hour of the day, and there's a lot of guilt that can kind of wash over us as like creative people when you're not sort of part of something, when you're out of the circle a little bit. And I think the industry kind of has to address, and it's going to take a long time, but it really needs to address what it values now compared to maybe like 10 years ago, which is all those things that I've just talked about. And I think unless the people that kind of set those boundaries or respect those kind of values change their mentality as like, actually today, what can people offer that's going to be beneficial rather than these kind of like archaic values, then nothing's really going to change. And it starts from the top. And I think even just, as I said, I'm failing, but like even just at a very small level within our agency, just making sure that I'm just talking more from like a perspective of like people about to have children, like just making sure that they're prepared before they get into the role, and sort of like, look, you might not think it's necessary now, but it's really important that you start to set your expectations now before the baby's out. And they're not going to be things that you maybe think like, are necessary, but you should have a few different types of expectations because you don't know what you're going to be like when you come back. And actually, you're not coming back to your old job. You're coming back to a new job, and you kind of need to look at it that way. So there's lots of different factors, but I think those are the main two, I think, for me, make.
I'm hearing, a lot of it comes down to flexibility and understanding individual needs, right? But I'm going to ask, you talked a little bit about policies. Have you seen or experienced within the advertising industry any workplace policies for expecting mothers that you thought were really great, that have done well, or anything that you could see improving when it comes to policies specifically in the workplace?
I think it's partly making sure you find your tribe and the right people that are going to be supportive. I think one of the things that isn't talked about loads is the return to work. I think your point around you're coming back almost to a different job and you've got to somehow do your old job and a new job all in one is really true. And I think there's a big confidence gap often that happens that I definitely experienced after my second, where I hadn't been in an office for 2.5 years because of COVID. And I suddenly had 2 kids and I was walking into a brand new agency, brand new job. It was full on. And I definitely had a confidence gap. And I think there's lots of agencies lots of agencies do kind of return to work, sort of mentoring and things like that. And I think that's a really critical place to help people come back in and kind of try and leap that confidence gap and feel secure in doing their role in a different way, is the truth.
I think also in a weird way that I've only seen really basic policies in place, but a lot of it, to your point, is like it depends on the people around you. Like it's a lot of unsaid, unspoken kind of things that you hope that your peers around you will sort of like help you with. But needing to have like people around you that kind of understand, you don't even have to have children. Like I think understanding what those policies are and setting up those guiding principles in your agency so that everybody knows in that agency what we need to do to help like mothers in the agency. So we're all helping. It's not just reliant on like, oh, you're a mother, so you must know what it's like to be a mother. It's like, no, everybody knows. And I think to your point also about that guilt that kind of hangs around you like a horrible smell. It's like, even though people, you have these policies in place, it doesn't mean that you don't always feel guilty, that you're always letting someone down. You're either letting your child down or you're letting your peers down because you can't be there for that meeting. You can't stay late. You can't do these things. It's just this horrible battle. But I think if there's like a conscious understanding within your agency that these are okay, I think a lot of that guilt will dissipate. And mums will feel like much more confident to take on those roles and not feel like that horrible pressure.
Yeah, I guess the way I see it is policy is just the bare basics of what we should be doing. The agencies that I'm seeing that are doing the best for the people, again, it's not about the policies, it's about the people, or it's about, making a statement about looking after every single individual in that business and making sure that they really follow through with that. You're right, a lot of the policies that you see are very standard, but it's those interactions which are really, really important. And I had to, when my son Cass was born, so I was running a department, I was head of art, and even in the 8 months that I was away, even the language, like we have such coded language in advertising, even the language changed. So what was called a banner ad was suddenly called display advertising. I came back running a department going, I don't even know what the fuck a display ad is, and I'm supposed to be getting 35 people to make one. And I was too scared to ask because I felt like suddenly I'd kind of like fallen off the advertising language ladder somewhere along the way. And I think some help or some guidance or a way of being able to ask a bit more comfortably would have been great.
And I think I had a thought which kind of marries the two, which is less about creating industry policies, but kind of creating a new industry mindset, which is all around language and how we talk about working with working parents. Like, we want you to work with us, like come to us and tell us how you want to work, like, because you add value to our industry, and take away language that inspires the mum guilt. Like, the mum guilt is a real thing. I wrote this article where it like quotes that it affects women more because of internalized gender stereotypes, which, like, I've witnessed it. Like, I love that fathers go to pick up their kids, but they are more championed than women. Like, we are seen as the people that leave the office because we're not fully invested in the work. Like, we need a shift of mindset that we can empower parents, women and men, and it's a great thing to have to leave the office because we know you're great at your job and you can do it well. This is when you need to do it how you do it, and come and work for us.
And it's about galvanizing those allies and making sure that they understand that perspective for people who aren't mothers and maybe are responsible for setting those policies or overseeing the people within the company. And so I'm going to ask the group now, how can we move from viewing motherhood as a hindrance to celebrating it as a strength?
I think, I was already like wanging on about that, but like, it is an amazing thing. Like, the optimization of my time is wild. So like, give me a brief and I can probably answer it in like an hour. No, I'm joking. I spend more time than that. But like, optimizing your time and just it opens your eyes to like how you problem solve. Like, I've never problem solved like I do now. Like, seeing everything through a kid's eyes just really, like, it is such a strength, and it should be seen as such.
I think, to your point, it comes from the top. So I think we can do in this room as much as we can to champion motherhood, but it really has to come from the people at the top that have the power to be able to kind of change the culture of the businesses that we're in, because that's really what we're sort of playing with. And it's very, very difficult. If you're an exhausted mum or anyone else that is not up here, it's a real burden to put on the shoulders of those parents or those other people to change things for themselves. I think it has to be really focused, systemic kind of change from leadership, which is good what you're doing.
I think it comes back to those values again. It's going to take a while, but I think understanding that the way we're moving now in advertising and what we need and the things that are going to make us successful aren't the things that we did before. Staying late, first in, last out, mothers can't keep up with that. Staying to work on a pitch all night, mums, parents can't do that. It's changing those mindsets to like, it's not about staying late for no apparent reason. It's this person can do that job really efficiently and we can move quickly in that kind of sense. It's just changing the mindset. I have no idea how we do this. It's more kind of just like having these kind of open conversations within agencies. And if you see some of those like old school kind of like values playing out, you call it out because you don't want that to be the culture of your place. And then that in turn will just put emphasis on the importance of like what mums and mums can do and offer in a really sort of like effective way.
I just have one kind of thought to build on you, which is one of the really practical things that I've put in place, because there are all these client pressures and clients want things quicker and what have you, and actually sitting down with the clients and going, we'll spend the same amount of hours, but if you do that over 5 days rather than 3 days, you're going to get more diversity into the work, because mothers will be able to be on your work, like people from low socioeconomic backgrounds who might have a second job, whatever it is, people who are traveling from outside of London, they will be able to be part of your work and your work will be better. So, same amount of hours, let's stretch it out. Let's not make people work till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, because we're talking a lot about, internal recognition and policies and equality within the workforce, but you're all in the creative field too. So it's, when you're building advertisements and how are we targeting moms and, kind of breaking down those gender stereotypes and how mothers are portrayed out in the world too. And so being able to, demonstrate that through your work will be, really powerful as well. And I have one last question to wrap us up, unless anyone wanted to build on the last comment. We good? All right. Piece of advice that you would give to working mothers in creative fields who are struggling to balance their roles. How can they harness their unique strengths to thrive at home and at work? Words of wisdom.
I think I sort of look back and I sort of think it's a hard thing to do, but back yourself and somehow find your voice to stand up for yourself, actually. And I think we all have that power within us. It's just having the confidence to do it. But I think we're all amazing at what we do, to have 2 small people in the jobs that we have and whatever else. And I just think we should just occasionally just give ourselves we're hard on ourselves sometimes, I think. And yeah, back yourself.
I'll do it. I'm actually going to steal this from Michelle Wolf. I went to see one of her stand-ups recently and she'd just given birth. And one of the things that she said she found really funny was like, when people say to her like, oh, you have it all, like you have it all. She's like, I don't want it all. And I thought about that walking away. I was like, wow. And it's true. Like the only thing I would say is like, don't try and have it all. It is a choice. There are choices it's not sacrifices, it's choices. You make choices that are better for you, better for your kid, better for your work. And it's just like, don't try and do everything. Just do what you do well.
Yeah. Look, I would just say, looking back at maybe my kind of younger self and looking back at all the amazing experiences that my son has had because of the industry that we're in and the creativity that he's surrounded by and all the guilt that I felt when he was smaller, I would just say to myself, that don't feel that, because actually he's got so much, richness and wonderfulness out of the industry that we're in. And yeah, don't be so hard on yourself.
I feel like I have to wrap it all up now. But I think it touches on two things you said, which was back yourself. And I think back yourself in a way that is like unapologetic. Like you've got nothing to be sorry for. I feel like we constantly apologize, like, sorry, I have to leave the office, or sorry, I have to do this, or sorry, I have to take this call while doing my son's shoelaces. And really, like, don't apologize, back yourself. And like you were saying, you take your son on shoots and across the world, like ask for what you need. I think and I think it's easier said than done, especially when you're in leadership. You feel empowered to ask. And I think everybody should ask. Let's ask. The worst they're going to say is no.
Can't be scared about that. I went into a whole sorry conversation with someone too. It was like, scan your emails, see how much you say sorry. Women are 10 times more likely to do it than men, and I don't know why we do it. But thank you all so much. This was a really, really incredible conversation with some very unique perspectives and doing remarkable things, pushing forward agendas on creating more equality in the workplace, especially for moms, starting your own company, leading a company, and everything in between. So thank you all very much for your time, and thank you.